Hello everyone. In this video we'll examine how fighting in Kansas helped ignite the bloody American Civil War. As you remember, the Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865. Focusing on Chase County in central Kansas, we will recall some of the patriotic settlers who responded to President Lincoln's call for volunteers to save the Union. When the military history of the Civil War is considered, people often recall the large battles east of the Mississippi River, among them Gettysburg in Pennsylvania and Vicksburg in Mississippi. At Gettysburg in July 1863, 160,000 soldiers fought for 3 days. There were 51,000 casualties. About the same time, the siege of Vicksburg led to another 38,000 casualties. Historians consider Gettysburg and Vicksburg military turning points. Both led to the defeat of the Confederacy. But what about the origins of the war? History books often say that the Civil War began in April 1861 when the Confederates attacked Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. But strife in frontier Kansas was the real prelude to the Civil War. In this largely unsettled territory, abolitionists and slave owners battled over the terms of the new state's admission to the Union. This vicious struggle began 6 years before the seizure of Fort Sumter. The key issue was whether Kansas should be admitted to the Union as a free state or a slave state. It would affect the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, where there had been an equal number of senators from slave and free states. In 1854, a Congress deeply divided over the issue of slavery in the territories had approved the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It directed male residents of Kansas and Nebraska to determine whether their states should enter the Union as free or slave states. The act shifted the struggle over slavery from the halls of Congress to the prairies of Kansas. Abolitionists from the North and slaveholders from the South raced to settle this state. Not surprisingly, violence broke out along the Kansas-Missouri border, for Missouri was a slave state. Bleeding Kansas, as it was called, erupted in guerrilla warfare. John Brown, a militant abolitionist from Connecticut, led volunteers in Kansas opposed to slavery. In response to the sacking of Lawrence in May 1856 by pro-slavery forces, Brown and his followers raided and murdered slave owners living near Pottawatomie Creek. Border ruffians from Missouri and jayhawkers from abolitionist settlements would attack each other's communities along the border for much of the next decade. Bloody Bill Anderson, a Southern sympathizer, operated freely in Morris County near Council Grove. One extreme act of violence occurred in August 1863 when the Confederate guerrilla William Quantrell led a band of 450 raiders into Lawrence. They plundered and torched the town and murdered 150 to 200 men and boys. In light of the violence along the Missouri border and Indian trouble to the west, it is not surprising that Kansans responded willingly to calls for military volunteers. In 1860, the population was small, only 107,000 people in the entire territory. But Kansas would supply over 20,000 soldiers. The federal government had requested only 16,654. Chase County in the Flint Hills, which had a population of 808 people in 1860, enjoyed a large and enthusiastic turnout of volunteers. According to William Cutler's History of the State of Kansas, published in 1883, probably no county in the United States of America could show that 27% of its voting population enlisted in 1861, except this one. Before Abraham Lincoln took the presidential oath in March 1861, 7 states had seceded. South Carolina led the way, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. One of President Lincoln's first tasks was to mobilize and equip an army to suppress the rebellion. That was a mammoth task. For in early 1861, the U.S. Army had only 16,000 troops, scattered across the country at 79 posts. It was a frontier army, equipped to combat Indians, not Southern rebels. After Confederate forces seized Fort Sumter in April 1861, Lincoln issued a call for 75,000 loyal citizens to preserve the Union. The War Department offered a $100 bounty to every volunteer. Newspapers in Kansas advertised, "Recruits wanted, $100 bounty in gold." In September 1861, the state of Kansas ordered all males between ages 18 and 45 and capable of bearing arms to enroll in military units and bring their guns. Refusal to obey would be considered evidence of disloyalty. Kansans rushed to enlist, as did men in other states. Patriotism ran strong. Many were strong-willed abolitionists eager to free the slaves. Others were patriots determined to preserve the Union. Some, I suppose, simply needed the money, for the winter of 1860-1861 had been extremely harsh. There had been a terrible drought in Kansas. Many of the newcomers faced starvation. 30,000, it was reported, returned to homes in the East. It's worth remembering that life in Kansas in 1860 was rough and crude. Most of the people lived in little log cabins or dugouts. Dogs, chickens, pigs, and humans all inhabited the same space. 90% of the settlers were under age 40 and had come to Kansas in search of free land. Most were men who wanted to farm. Some had come to wage a war against slavery. Only in the eastern part of the state was it settled. The frontier ran from Marysville to Salina, Council Grove, and Emporia. Emporia, at that time, has been described as a forlorn hamlet where residents occasionally kill stray buffalo in the streets. Those who remained in Kansas chose to defend their homes and state. One of these was Sam Wood, the Ohio-born Quaker and Kansas legislator. He enlisted in June 1861. He sought to organize a company of rangers to defend settlers on the frontier. Explaining his decision to enlist to his wife, he said, "His whole soul was in the strife. I had to volunteer to enter into the strife. It was the only thing to save my life. Better far be pierced with a bullet and die for my country than to die the death that I was dying in Topeka while in the legislature." David Wood, his 10-year-old son, sought to join the Rangers and is shown in his uniform. Also joining Wood's Rangers was his maternal cousin Sidney A. Breeze. Wood's Rangers would be folded into General John C. Fremont's 6th Regiment of Missouri Cavalry. They participated in the first major battle west of the Mississippi at Wilson's Creek, Missouri in August 1861. Wood's Rangers suffered no casualties in that battle. Wood seems to have been an effective commander, but he did not submit easily to Army discipline. Indeed, he tried to resign 4 times in 14 months. According to his biographer, his enthusiasm for war lasted less than a year. He saw military service, the biographer says, as an opportunity for personal aggrandizement. His resignations, which averaged one every 4 months, indicated that Wood's whole soul was in the strife only when the strife was fought his way. Instead, Wood opted out of military service to resume his service to the legislature and to attend personal business activities in Morris and Chase counties. These included real estate and railroad promotional schemes. We've discussed some of these in earlier videos. A frustrated Sam Wood left the Army in August of 1862. But his cousin Breeze served until August 1864 and was elected captain of his company. He was wounded in the arm at Sabine Crossroads, Louisiana, and would later collect a $10 per month pension. As a civilian, Breeze served as Chase County clerk and as postmaster of Cottonwood Falls. He was well respected in the community for his service, but Breeze experienced health problems and eventually took his own life. Both Breeze and Sam Wood are buried in Prairie Grove Cemetery in Cottonwood Falls. A young letter carrier, Francis Marion Lyon, brought first word to Chase County of the Wilson's Creek battle. He would later enlist himself and see extensive combat with the 2nd Regiment of the Kansas Cavalry. Hearing this news, a Swiss immigrant walked 40 miles from Matfield Green to Emporia to volunteer. He was Henry Brandley. He enlisted in Company B of the 9th Regiment, Kansas Volunteer Cavalry. Brandley served for nearly 4 years, mustering out as a captain. Company B was assigned to duty in Colorado, Wyoming, and Idaho. It protected wagon trains from hostile Indians and built Fort Halleck in Wyoming. The fort was intended to protect travelers and a mail route from Kansas to Salt Lake City. In a skirmish with Ute Indians, Brandley was wounded in the hand. He would later collect a $10 a month pension. Returning to civilian life, Brandley farmed in the Matfield Green area and served with distinction in the state legislature from Chase County. Several other young men from Chase County joined Company B. Among them were Isaac Alexander, one of the founders of Cottonwood Falls, Andrew Burdick, Patrick McCabe, John Wesley Reams, Henry Reeve, Aaron Watson, and Vincent Williams. Two brothers of German ancestry, Gus and Henry Hegwer, also served in Brandley's company. Gus Hegwer would die in a tragic accident in 1886. He froze to death in a blizzard while hunting in Kiowa County. His brother Henry had a more extensive military career. After mustering out of the 9th Regiment, he became a 2nd lieutenant in the 18th Kansas Cavalry, serving 4 months on the frontier in 1867 to protect settlers from hostile Indians. His obituary notes that he was a pioneer plainsman, a soldier, a scout, a stage driver, buffalo hunter, and operator of one of the first salt works in Hutchinson. He was a contemporary of Buffalo Bill and Wild Bill Hickok, and even employed the latter, Hickok, as a buffalo hunter for the Santa Fe Railroad. Later in life, he organized veterans of Indian wars to lobby for federal pensions. Henry Hegwer is buried in Denver, Colorado. Other prominent people who joined Company B included Robert C. Madden from Emporia, a former British soldier who served with Brandley in Idaho, then joined the Army of the Cumberland and saw extensive combat in battles in Virginia, Mississippi, and eastern Tennessee. Madden and Brandley became close friends. Madden settled in Chase County after the war and is buried in Matfield Green. Another member of Company B was Aaron Watson, a soldier who won praise from his peers. Watson was a sergeant, a tall man. He would subsequently lead Decoration Day parades in Chase County, wearing Billy Lyon's soldier cap. Lyon, the brother of Mrs. Sam Wood, had enlisted in Company B of the 9th Regiment early in April 1862, but he died of pneumonia 2 weeks later. After Quantrill's attack on Lawrence in August 1863, Company B was ordered to eastern Kansas, where it joined in the pursuit of Quantrill and participated in several engagements in Missouri, Arkansas, and Indian Territory. Overall, the 9th Regiment seldom fought as a single unit. Its companies were dispatched to irregular and hazardous tasks along the border from the Missouri River to the Rocky Mountains. Of the 1,527 men who served in the regiment, 56 died from combat and 201 from disease. In response to the call for military volunteers, some young men walked long distances to enlistment centers with their best friends. In July 1862, Thomas Norton and his friend Calvin Sharp, both from Bazar, walked all the way to Fort Larned, a distance of about 175 miles, to enlist in the 9th Regiment. A year later, his younger brother John Norton enlisted in the 9th Regiment with Anderson Sharp, but this time in Emporia. It was not uncommon for married men to leave their wives and children for service in President Lincoln's war. In those days, Cottonwood Falls was a little village of cabins, with most of the men having gone to war. Indians, antelope, deer, and buffalo were the nearest neighbors. Supplies were scarce, and children had to be fed. It took considerable courage for women to keep the home fires burning on the frontier in the 1860s. Aaron Watson, a carpenter, left a wife and 2 children at home to go to war, serving in the 9th Regiment for 3 years. Cyrus Allen enlisted in 1862, leaving behind a wife and 4 children on his Middle Creek farm to serve for 3 years in the 5th Kansas Cavalry. Isaac Winner, another farmer, left a wife and 4 children to enlist for nearly 2 years with the 15th Regiment. And John Hawkins, a farmer from Clements, age 45, enlisted in Company B of the 14th Kansas Cavalry, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. He died of disease and is buried at Fort Smith National Cemetery. There also, incidentally, appears to be a gravestone for him in the Clements Cemetery. Less than 10% of Kansas enlistees died while serving in the military. There were some combat deaths, but the vast majority died from disease. Twice as many Kansas volunteers died from disease, 2,106, as did those who died from combat, 1,000. At least 6 Chase County volunteers died of disease in the Army. In addition to John Hawkins, mentioned a few moments ago, Thomas Norton passed away while serving with the 9th Regiment in Arkansas, as did Vincent Williams. Williams is buried in the Little Rock National Cemetery. Charles Fowler from Toledo died of disease at Camp Babcock in Arkansas. Henry Hillbrandt, an early settler who farmed on Diamond Creek, is buried at Fort Leavenworth National Cemetery. John Mitchell passed away in Missouri and is buried in the Springfield National Cemetery. Reuel Farnsworth is another. He is buried in Council Grove's Greenwood Cemetery. There may have been other deaths from disease for whom we do not have information. One of the more patriotic early Chase County families was the Leonard family, who arrived from Pennsylvania in 1857 and settled in the Bazar area. Dr. Morgan Reinhardt Leonard served in the state legislature and was the first probate judge in Chase County. He enlisted, and so did his 3 brothers, Jonah, Frank, and George. George joined the 2nd Regiment, Kansas Volunteer Cavalry. He died in the fall of 1864 after Confederate forces captured a supply train that he was guarding in Oklahoma Territory. Available records indicate that George was imprisoned in the Cherokee Nation and passed away there. Desertion was a major problem for both Confederate and Union militaries in the Civil War. It ran as high as 15% of all troops. Nearly 2,000 Kansas volunteers deserted. Deserters were shunned by their peers, branded as cowards, and subjected to social pressures. One alleged deserter was George Balch, a New Yorker who enlisted in the 5th Kansas Cavalry. His company experienced heavy fighting in Missouri and Arkansas. Balch reportedly deserted in August of 1864. Later, in 1881, he was elected sheriff of Chase County. Opponents accused him of being soft on strong city joints that served liquor, and they produced a report of his army desertion. Balch's friends defended him. Cyrus Allen, who had enlisted with him and served with him in the 5th Regiment, claimed the charge of desertion was, quote, an unmitigated falsehood. But William Morgan, publisher of the Chase County Leader and a member of the Grand Army of the Republic posts locally, blasted Balch in an 1883 editorial. According to Morgan, Balch should be damned. Balch was soundly defeated in the county elections a week later. He would leave for California and grow grapes in an attempt to revive his reputation as a businessman. After the tragic deaths of his sons and wife, he passed away in an insane asylum. One early settler who achieved later wealth and prominence was Charles S. Hills. He arrived from New York in the late 1850s, served as the first clerk of the Chase County Board of Supervisors in 1859, and also as postmaster. He preempted the quarter section of land on which Cottonwood Falls is located. Hills and Sam Wood laid out the town. Hills enlisted in the Home Guard with friends from Emporia and marched to Kansas City, where his unit was placed under the command of General Nathaniel Lyon. At the Battle of Wilson's Creek in 1861, Hills was wounded. He re-enlisted and was later promoted to lieutenant colonel and placed in charge of the 10th Kansas Cavalry, which distinguished itself at Fort Blakely, Alabama, near Mobile. His brigade captured a rebel force of 800 men and its arms. Hills was decorated and brevetted as a colonel by President Lincoln. After the war, Hills moved to St. Louis, entered the wholesale tobacco business, and became a millionaire. In 1900, newspapers said his was the handsomest home in St. Louis. It was an ornate mansion in the Greek Revival style. His wife erected a 51-foot obelisk in Bellefontaine Cemetery to memorialize him. It is the tallest obelisk in St. Louis. The influential Murdoch family also warrants recognition. The father, Thomas, from Western Virginia, freed his slaves and moved to Ohio, then after business setbacks came to Kansas in 1856. An ordained Methodist minister, he settled in the Emporia area and at the outbreak of the Civil War helped organize the 9th Regiment. Thomas Murdoch served as its chaplain, and his 3 sons, Marshall, Thomas Bent, and Roland P., enlisted. Bent and Roland, who held property in Chase County, served in the 9th Regiment. Marshall, the oldest, who had been prospecting in Colorado, later organized the 18th Regiment and became its colonel. After the war, all 3 served in influential positions. Marshall established and edited the Wichita Eagle. Roland, his youngest brother, served as its business manager. Bent, the middle son, published the El Dorado Republican and also served in the state legislature. Many of the Chase County volunteers moved on after the war. They sought opportunities in the expanding West after completion of the transcontinental railroads and the opening of other Indian lands to settlement. The 1889 Oklahoma land rush prompted Alban Brandley and Calvin and Anderson Sharp to move to El Reno in central Oklahoma, west of Oklahoma City. There they farmed and engaged in stock raising. Albin prospected for gold in the Wichita Mountains. The lure of mineral riches also apparently attracted Theodore Dunlap to Nevada City, California, and Jeremiah Nolan, a veteran of both the Mexican and Civil Wars, to Rapid City, South Dakota. The longest surviving of the original volunteers was Charles Luther Fish, born in Ohio, who migrated to Kansas. A resident of Chase County in 1860, he moved to Colorado, then in Kansas Territory, and became a stagecoach guard and Indian fighter. He had many narrow escapes while fighting Indians. On one occasion, his hat was shot full of holes, but he escaped unscathed. Fish was a friend of Kit Carson and Buffalo Bill Cody. He enlisted in McLean's light artillery in Colorado, and when it came east in 1864, he participated in battles on the Missouri front. After the war, Fish returned to Chase County. He farmed on Stribby Creek. Later, he was the conductor on the horse-drawn trolley between Strong City and Cottonwood Falls. Fish died in Atlanta at age 95, though some obituaries said he was 97. He was buried in Indiana. In a subsequent video, we'll discuss the many veterans who came to Chase County after the war, put down their roots, raised families, and remain in perpetual rest in county cemeteries. Here is a roster of those who listed the county as their home during the war. We apologize for any errors. We've used online research collections to review the soldiers on the list. Thank you for watching.